All right. My name is Amy Archer-Master, so I'll go ahead and officially get us started today. Lauren, our current chair, is not able to attend this meeting, so we'll just be facilitating it as staff. And I will officially call it to order. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made it available to the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. The pub believes and acts upon anti-racist principles in our meeting spaces and interactions with pub. While every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted toward people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. This means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. We put these principles into action by being active and deliberate. We speak up and we speak out, and each person is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board. We focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person. I'll quickly run through our meeting guidelines as well. When appropriate, state your name before you speak and who you're addressing, or just that you're addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by the hosts, myself, and Jonna Lynn, so please limit any chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for technical assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and have not been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board in these meetings. We may lower your hand once you begin speaking just to maintain the flow of conversation. During the public comment periods, the public can raise their hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos can be turned on when speaking if desired. It is not required. We ask that you mute your microphone when not speaking. You may need to press *6 to mute and unmute on a phone. Public comment, as mentioned, will be taken during the comment period early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat with myself or Jonna Lynn, or just raise your hand during the comment period. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. This meeting is being recorded. Since Lauren's not here, I'll quickly run through the agenda. So we'll do the front end typical business, and then we will move into co-chair nominations, discuss and hopefully take a vote. Then we'll do our annual review of bylaws and any other governing documents that we need to look at, and then spend some time doing some review and discussion on annual report and work plan. So a lot of internal stuff today. So it's a slightly different meeting than usual. And then we'll conclude with announcements and preparation for the meeting on September 18th. So first, we will start with taking public comment. So is there anybody? I don't have anybody signed up in advance. If there is a member of the public in the room who wishes to give public comment, please unmute yourself now and we'll take your comment. All right, seeing and hearing none, I will move on. I believe that our slides perhaps skipped disclosures of communication. I think we might have accidentally removed a slide. So I will pause for a moment and just take that as well. So if there are any members of the board who have disclosures that you want to make, now would be a great time to do that. You just unmute yourself or raise your hand. All right, seeing and hearing none, we will move on to the review and acceptance of the draft minutes. So Jonna Lynn, drafted the minutes from the last meeting on August 21st. Hopefully folks had a chance to take a look at that in the read ahead materials. Are there any corrections or edits that folks found that we want to make for the record?
I did get an edit from a member, and we'll update the date of today's meeting to the 2nd instead of the 5th.
It's funny, for some reason the 5th was in my head too, so we must have had the same thinking. One of the recent meetings must have been on the 5th. And for those of you who are newer to the board, just keep in mind if at any point you're looking back at minutes and something doesn't look right, or we missed the attendance of somebody, you can contact staff at any time and we can make updates in the future as well. But we typically just want to make sure that you all have had a chance to take a look at it, and then we make sure that they're posted publicly. So not seeing or hearing any additional changes, then Jonathan will update with the one edit that was received, and we will consider those accepted. So the first item on our agenda is for co-chair, and unfortunately our current other co-chair, who has been operating independently for a little while, Lauren Rosenkrantz, she's not able to be here today. But as typically we want two co-chairs so that they can share that responsibility and then have each other to work with, both for facilitating meetings, planning agendas, etc. And we, as required by code, usually at the first meeting of the new year, once we have new appointees, we take nominations. And Kyle Chipman, one of our current voting members, had volunteered to be considered for co-chair, and is the only person, additional person on the board who's indicated interest right now. For those of you who are new to the board, keep in mind the opportunity is always there. So in the future, a year from now, we'll be doing this again. And the two chairs, even once appointed, always welcome input and facilitation help from others. So there's always opportunities in between. But Kyle, I'm going to give the floor to you. Usually, I mean, often we have more than one candidate being considered, but I still think it's good to, for the record, just capture anything that you want to share with the board regarding your interest and goals as far as volunteering for the co-chair role.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Amy, Jonah, and my fellow board members. My name is Kyle Chipman, voting member, and I put my name out there for co-chair for a few reasons. First, just after being on the board for a year, functionally, I feel more comfortable facilitating and being present. I caught the rhythm of the board, and to step in and serve the role that, along with Lauren, it just feels like a good fit, and I'd love to show up for the board in that capacity. The second aspect is my professional work, my day job is all about communication management, workflow management, process, knowledge base, project and program, like a lot of stuff, basically facilitating the flow of information and working in collaboration to build consensus on how people work together. So just like over the course of the previous year, observing opportunities and understanding really constraints as well, and the reality of how we can function, just looking to formalize that and put together and build in consensus and collaboration a vision of how we can all step up and function more nimbly and more elegantly in coordination with each other and in direct coordination and support of our citizenry and the bureaus that we work alongside. So that's really my piece. I have some more specific stuff we can talk about in the work plan, but that's me in a nutshell for our new members. Did I say that in a way that made sense and was clear?
That was perfect, Kyle.
Ooh, perfect. I love that
Any
word.
questions or comments from others or any other? Yeah, Julia.
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so it's not the easiest interface. But yes, I just want to say that I'm so excited that you're volunteering to serve. I think that Kyle is the perfect fit for this role, and I'm glad that you have the capacity to do it, because I think you are uniquely situated both with your skills and what you would like to bring into this space for serving in that role. So thank you for stepping up to the plate.
Thank you so much, Julie. It's a pleasure too, Julie. Julie's a cool person. We're all cool people. But specifically to that, that's the other piece. I'm actually in the Midwest training my direct support, who will be my replacement. And I'm already going down to 32 hours on my professional job, starting when I return to Portland. And I'm so excited to be able to really invest that extra day, the extra time, and to show up very strong for the board, for the city, and all of our, I think, that which unifies our passion and commitment to formalize it with the extra professional working time that I have. So that's another critical piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Lorraine, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Kyle, for stepping up. I know we've been operating on a very lean but effective team for the last year or so. And it's nice that you have the capacity to step up. I appreciate it. And I'm glad that you're willing to do so. But one little thing I want to share with you. I like that you want to do it elegant. I'm all good with getting down and dirty and getting it done too. So I hope that we can combine those things, that we keep it real and we're doing it elegantly real, and stepping up where we need to ensure that we're heard, and we are heard in an authentic way as we move forward. So thanks so much for stepping up.
Thank you, Lorraine. Appreciate that input. And on behalf of Lauren, who's not here, I know that she is very excited to have a partner in the role. So was very appreciative of Kyle's both acknowledgement of waiting until the time was right, where you could balance everything, and your willingness to step into the role. So in light of that, the next steps would be, if with the pub support, and I would welcome a motion if a board member is willing. Our goal would be to advance a recommendation to the mayor to appoint Kyle Chipman as the co-chair. So if somebody would take the floor and make a motion. I see, Julia, you unmuted. Are you?
Yeah. I'm making the motion. I was just waiting for you to pause. Yeah, I would like to move to nominate, or whatever the correct word is, Kyle Chipman to be the vice chair of the pub.
Co-chair, yes.
Co-chair. Sorry,
Second.
I knew it was co-chair. My brain
There's no
thought
hierarchy.
co-chair. Anyway, apologies.
Yeah, they're partners, but perfect. Thank you, Julia. I think
Second.
Lorraine, you had your hand up.
Lorraine Wilson, pub member. I second.
Perfect. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment?
Sure. Good luck.
All right. Thank you, TJ. Any final discussion from board members? Seeing none, I'll go ahead just in the order in which you're numbered. If you could indicate yes or no or abstention. Jenny, will go to you first.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Lorraine?
Yes.
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 Thank you, Daryl and Carmen.
Yes.
Myra.
I believe it's my turn. Julia DeGraw, voting member. I vote yes.
Alexis Wright, voting member. I vote yes.
Brooke Perhanu, voting member, vote yes.
Kyle Chipman, voting member. I vote yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle, for your willingness to step up. All right, so we'll move on to the next order of business, which is more administration and update of the bylaws. So as you all are aware, code was updated through a citywide process when they changed the structure of the government to remove old references to commissioners in charge and update it to new council and the hierarchy under the new structure. And at the time that that happened, we did not update bylaws since it was mid-year and we do an annual review of the bylaws. So right now is we've sent out a draft that was compiled just by staff. So we tried to capture anything that we saw as changes that would just update to align with the code, would also reflect current practices of the board and notices and other issues. If we don't have any substantive updates at this time, but we'll walk through the document really quickly to see what the changes are. If there are more substantive updates that the board is interested in, then we can either hold for the adoption of the bylaws until a later date where you can discuss the substantive updates more thoroughly. But there's also still the citywide realignment of advisory bodies process where they're doing some assessment, and I believe some recommendations will be coming out related to bylaws. So we anticipate that if there were more substantive changes that we would be addressing them at that point in time. So let me take just a moment and change my screen share to share the bylaws, and then I will open the floor for discussion. So the draft that I am sharing is what was sent out to board members in advance. So it's just a typical red line version that highlights the changes as they were proposed. Most of them are pretty straightforward in that they're taking language, as I mentioned, changing commissioner in charge and instead indicating where the mayor is approving something, and then it goes to council. So a lot of the changes are just administrative in that regard. Kyle, go ahead.
Thank you. Kyle Chipman, voting member. Agreed. The bylaws seemed pretty straightforward. I only had 2 points that jumped out to me. One was just to reconfirm. And that first point is it is 6 people for quorum, right? We're at that total board member count for 6?
Yes, yes. So the quorum is 6. So you have 10 voting members currently, so need at least 6 for decision.
The second one is maybe this can be discussed after we move through the bylaws, but I was just curious on the point of the 3 ex officio members, what the timing of that looks like, if there's like logistics that people on the bureau side nominate themselves or each other, or how that transpires.
Yeah, so typically we often are appointing ex officios at the same time as our voting members. So one of the complications this year has been that the labor side, with the new union and the changeover in staffing and the pretty complex just workload of the labor folks who are looking for the right appointee for the voting position, has been delayed. And so they are actively working on that and hoping to appoint somebody. There's some technicalities around just some questions about funding for the time of that person. And so the union is working that out with some feedback with the city attorney. And so I think that will be resolved relatively soon, and then they'll be able to identify their person. The reason the ex officios then hinge upon that is that the code, as it stands currently, where there's 2 bureaus, state that there should be 4 total, so the 1 voting and 3 ex officios, and that they're supposed to be split between ensuring that there's 2 that are labor represented and 2 that are non-represented, so that you have representation and that it's balanced between the 2 bureaus. So until we know which bureau the labor voting seat sits, they can't identify within the bureaus the other labor seat for ex officio and then the other appropriate complement. So their process is managed within the bureau. So I think they get the word out to their staff for those who are interested, or sometimes in the past it has been like there's a particular hot issue that we're anticipating in the coming year. And so management has identified it would be really valuable to have somebody with this kind of role or expertise. And so they seek somebody with that specifically, like when we were dealing with lead, for example, and they appointed somebody who was within that program. So yeah, so it varies based on the needs of the board as well as the position. It's only delayed because of that. So we have one ex officio, I think, here with us today, Joanne, who's just, being a trooper and continuing to engage while she can. And then once the dominoes fall, then, the bureaus will identify whether she or others will continue or whether they'll appoint somebody new.
Thank you for the summary, Amy. That's where my head was going next too, with the two outstanding members. Once we reach consensus and the priorities we set in our work plan, if we can put those calls out and find best fits for bureau members that support or complement those priorities. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Alexis.
Yeah, I had a similar question, and that was really helpful, Amy, about the ex officio and the labor voting member. I don't see notice in here that one of the voting members has to be a labor union representative, but maybe I missed that. And so that was a question I had. But from what you just said, it made me wonder if maybe that's in like another part of city code and not in our city code.
Well, so this is not the code, this is the bylaws.
Right,
and
right.
A lot of it is duplicative in part
Yeah.
to try to make the bylaws so that it's all in one place that you can find all that information. So I'm surprised if it's not in here, but it may not be. The code does specifically call it out.
Okay.
And that was intentional because of the role that the board serves as the budget advisory committee as
Totally.
well, where there was the guidance and direction to ensure that labor has a
Yeah.
voice in that.
Yeah, I'm in full support of that, but didn't see that mentioned in here, and so was curious if we might want to add in something here about having a labor union representative as a voting member. And then with the ex officio members, I think you might have answered my question because I was wondering if we should specify in here, right? Like one to represent a BES and one to represent Water Bureau, of course, with city changes, like that delineation, right, is going to be a little bit harder. But I did wonder if we wanted to specify something in here about ensuring, right, like coverage of the range of different issues that the bureaus deal with. But you might have answered my question that generally the bureaus handle that, and so perhaps it's not needed here. And then my other question was about the quorum piece, and again, this might be in code and so not able to be changed, but another board that I sit on, if all voting, like we had vacancies and so therefore we're not able to vote because we could never get right to our 6 quorum. So what I wonder is if there's a way for us to adjust this so that it's at least half of like currently filled positions rather than, right, more than half of the full potential of the board, so that we don't get ourselves into another situation like last year where it was just really hard to do official acts without, because we had so many vacancies.
In order to change it, so again, the bylaws are supposed to provide a little more detail, but build upon the code, and the code supersedes, so we have to, at a minimum, have to meet that. The code is where the quorum number is defined. So I do think it's a good idea to explore changing some of that language if the board was interested in it. But we would need to do that at the code level, which then requires a slightly different process for approval. Although I think a good time for that will be when the realignment, the advisory board realignment project kind of moves forward, and there's going to be likely some deeper changes, both to code, bylaws, and processes that advisory boards are using. So I will make a note of that as an issue to potentially address then, but I think that would probably be the right time to revisit it and see whether we should change that. And similarly, the ex officio representation, the specifics about the bureaus is in code. So that too is an area that I expect will come back to when the realignment project is done and we're going to move. So I anticipate on our during this year work plan will be kind of realignment as that project moves forward, and then doing some code updates either now or as part of later in the year process. There were a couple, so this section I was just removing because it was only really relevant in the beginning of the formation of the board, so it's not relevant right now, just relating to initial appointments to ensure that there was some staggered terms, and that's pretty built in at this point. There was a section I wanted to skip to. So we did do things like add in some as soon as possible, because otherwise the way that it's written is pretty firm. And this year, for example, the first meeting of the fiscal year, we couldn't do the co-chair, so there's, some potential shifts to that. Also to reflect that there's some variance in co-chair terms. Historically, they started with initially appointing a 1 year and a 2 year with the intention of them being staggered. And I think that's still an important goal. But we've also had people who can't commit to a full 2 years, or who, because of circumstances, timing of their terms, it just hasn't worked. So just providing some flexibility around whatever the board is recommending the term should be. Let's see, there was something else I wanted to call out. Oh, I think around public notices.
As a comment about Tuesday, the Tuesday, Thursday meetings.
Yeah, so one of the comments, because it says that the bylaws will capture what the meeting schedule is. So we, when we shifted to primarily virtual meetings, that's when we kind of started doing more consistently the 2 meetings a month. But we've also had conversations with the board about uncertainty about the structure of those meetings. So I think with so many new members, I'm not sure that, again, right now is the time to document, what your meeting schedule is. If a month or 2 from now, you might be deciding that your second meeting really needs to be a subcommittee, or that you need to have some conversations about meeting time, or some flexibility around how you're addressing your work plan. So I wanted to flag it as something to potentially capture in the bylaws. It hasn't been captured thus far, so it's not necessary to do at this time, but maybe in the future it's a topic to get input from all of you on how you want to capture it. There were some changes to public comment just to reflect what has been done with the meetings as far as time allocation, and ensuring that you have up to 15 minutes scheduled for public comment. And we did add in that, so this piece, we've had some conversations with the board about delegation of duties. which, you know, again, we rely on the chairs in between meetings where if pub needs a representative, then we get the buy off of the chairs, one or both chairs, depending on who we can get in touch with to either speak on behalf of the board or confirm the response that staff is going to provide. So did add in just that the board through your meetings also sometimes designates or delegates responsibilities, not just to voting members, but also to ex officio members and staff, because we have had ex officios sometimes speak on behalf of the board when voting members were not available. And I think also to capture just the circumstances that have come up where it's not possible to always have a vote before you need to share an opinion. So I think that is a summary of all of the content changes. So any feedback, questions, comments, concerns about the way that it's drafted, or are folks feeling like you want to advance it with some of the notes that we've made? I think most of them are flagging issues for the future. Oh, one of you did recommend adding the reference to the labor designated seat. So what I would propose is that the edit that we place into here is just a mirror of what it says in the actual code itself. Kyle, go ahead.
This is a question that was occurring to me as I was reviewing the work plan, and it might be due in part, sorry, it might even be just enough to raise the point that it's not really best suited for discussion at this level right now. And it might be also as a result of the point Alexa was raising with the number of vacancies we had and the limited ability to set motions or you know, put out motions and have them be confirmed. Last year, it felt like there were a couple motions, but really it was about those times we testified to city council, showing up on the ARC committees, and also serving as kind of a sounding board to representatives from the bureaus, either before they were presenting to council or as they were determining best course of action. Is that like, do we want to step up our own expectations for the coming year? Or it felt pretty good, like we served a vital role, but do we want to serve a more official capacity in terms of motions passed, like the expectations we hold for ourselves? See, it's not really like a defined point. It's just something that I was turning around in my head as I was reviewing both these documents.
No, I think that's a really good question or point. And I think former member Karen made a similar point towards the end of her term last year as we were approaching some of these documents. And for the most part, I mean, one of the benefits that is provided is as long as you, in one of your public meetings, delegate responsibility to anybody, and that happens as a motion and a second, and you go through the vote process, then whatever you've decided through that, you have the authority to do. So you could delegate to anybody. So that the issues have only really come up when there isn't a meeting in the timeline that allows for some sort of formal vote, because then any of the individual voting members are just, there's a little more discomfort about what they're approved to say. Whereas if it has happened through the meetings, we have a clearer talking points and what the outcomes are. So, so I think you have that capacity under the existing bylaws. I don't know that anything is required to change that. It's the only piece that requires something when that voting process doesn't take place is going through chairs, because the chairs can always delegate their responsibility to somebody else.
Thank you, Amy. I'll say a kind of clean summarized response that is in anticipation of what the year can be based on the experience of the year that was, and then just open up the floor for anybody else who has similar thoughts. And then, Kyle Chipman, voting member, I always forget. Something I'm excited and motivated for in the coming year, especially with a more a diverse range of board members and that we have our quantity back up to 10 is being more intentional with subcommittees based off of our work plan priorities so that we can have small little clustered working units. And then rather than trying to accomplish and focus discussion within the hour and a half, twice a month call, the working units have, prepare a proposal, and then that's brought to the entire board for consensus. And then like motions are passed and we can be a little bit more proactive in the way that we show up. It's just a general thought that I've got for the year.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from other folks. I pulled up on screen, just jumped to the section that talks about committees, because this hasn't been used a lot because of the shift to 2 meetings a month, because it used to be that the second meeting was for some subcommittee work. And so really the only subcommittee that has been forming in the last few years has been the recruitment subcommittee. There have been project teams where it's just 1 or 2 people working with staff to kind of develop an idea that then can come to the full board. And that isn't captured in here, but doesn't need to be captured in a way. It's just doing kind of the behind the scenes work. But at any time, which usually happens when you're developing your work plan or some point during the year when an issue emerges and it's clear you don't have the time and capacity as a full board, that's when the board votes and establishes a committee of at least 3 members to then advance that work. So that's the way it's written right now. Lorraine.
Lorraine Wilson, voting member. So I just wanted to give some perspective. The last year, POB operated under was not a traditional year. It certainly was not. Where we were also dealing with the transition and things were coming at us fast and furious, and we were on the back leg. Prior years, we have been very proactive. We've had small committees, and it's trying to, we initially, I remember when we reviewed which document was it, Amy? I always have to rely on you. I think it's the operating document where we went through it. I think myself, and I don't remember which member.
Yes, when you did a more thorough review.
So 2 members, we met and we talked about it. So I just wanted to put that perspective in there. Your first year as a board member is not is not the year to judge the POB on. I can assure you of that. We have been very functional prior to this turmoil that we went through, and we were reactionary, and in some cases, it wasn't pretty and all of that. But I agree with you that hopefully now that we kind of have a sense of what this is going to look like and how it's shaking out, and even with the outreach person working on boards and committees, and we want to see how the city is going to respond and be responsive to our role that we have spoken about numerous times, and that we are here to be engaged and to be engaged early in the process rather than when we are engaged late and we have to be reactionary. I am all for that, but I just wanted to put that perspective on it. And I too am looking forward to working with another board members to really dig into issues, because I think that's where we get to the essence of what it is and who we are and what it is we want to see and what it is we want to advocate for and all of that. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Kyle Chipman, voting member. No judgment and no shade thrown. It was observation and intention for the time ahead. And thank you for the context, Lorraine. Super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that it has been an unusual year, but the use of committees and project teams have been the core of advancing some of the policy work and some of what happens outside of meetings, so that then the meetings are the most efficient use of everybody's time. Absolutely. All right. any other sections that folks want to look at, or are you feeling, so as far as process for the bylaws is, we want to make sure that we've captured everything for right now that folks are interested in. We earmark a couple of those things for future round. But then we would want the board to adopt an updated version of the bylaws. If you're not ready today, then it can be at a future meeting as well. And then we would send that to the mayor for approval. So it doesn't require a full council process, but we do make sure that we've had full discussion and opportunity for input during the meeting. Lorraine, go ahead.
Lorraine Wilson, voting members. I was just reflecting here, and is there anywhere in the bylaws that speaks to a member taking time off for personal reasons? I'm trying to remember because I know that applies directly to me. I was out of it for a big part of 2024, and willing to serve, but unwilling to do so. So I was just wondering if that is something that we need to articulate probably more succinctly going forward.
That's a good question, Lorraine. There is not anything specific to leaves of absence per se. There are code requirements around, and I'm trying to see whether there's in code and then in the bylaws here, it talks about absences for more than 3 regularly scheduled meetings in a 12-month period without having notified the co-chairs or staff in advance. So there's the presumption that if there's coordination and we are coordinating around absences, so we know when folks are missing, then it doesn't pose an issue. What does pose an issue is if members are missing meetings and it's unexpected, or we're not aware of the reasons why. And so then there's a question of whether there's the capacity or time commitment or interest in continuing to serve. So that's the only section that of both code and the bylaws that currently speak to that. I think the uniqueness of personal circumstances would probably warrant individual conversation most of the time, because at any point, regardless of a member's term, if there's personal reasons to step aside or to identify whether there's still interest, they just need a brief reprieve. That's something that would be discussed, but the code itself and the bylaws don't currently address unless it's uncoordinated absences.
Lauren Wilson, didn't put up my hand, sorry. Lauren Wilson, just to jump in there, Amy.
Yeah.
In my specific case, I didn't even have the capacity to call in. Okay, so we need to take that under consideration too. And I'm quite open. I was being treated for cancer, and I didn't have the capacity to even call and say, Amy, I can't attend meeting, because that wasn't my focus. And in some cases, that's the reality as we are as humans, that there's only so much we need to deal with. And I think we need to take that into consideration to probably reach out to the person. And even if you don't hear from them, give it a while, because for a time there, I didn't have the capacity to interact, to think, to engage, want to engage, or otherwise. I was singularly focused. So I just wanted to put that out there, because sometimes we need to be reminded of that part. And there's where I come from when we talk about advocating and community and putting the burden on the person who is already burdened, or putting the burden already on the community who's burdened, kind of thing, is can can be a challenge. I just wanted to put that out there that I respect that and I understand that, but sometimes you just don't have it in you.
Yes, absolutely. Alexis, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, Alexis, voting member. I just had a quick, maybe a suggestion, and I don't know what it says again in code versus bylaws, but for G here, I wonder, because I think this is a really important point that Lorraine is raising, if we might want to add some language in that says that there will be like an effort made to contact and like verify with the individual that they wish, like to seek confirmation that like they are resigning or something like that to allow for those sorts of circumstances, but like that every effort will be made, right, to contact someone and to have that resignation verified. Yeah, something like that is good in me. Thanks.
I'll continue wording something for folks to consider. Daryl, go ahead.
Now about voting member, I was thinking to also to Lorraine's point, which is very valid. We maybe should look to collect some auxiliary or secondary contact um, individuals if the scenario comes up that we ourselves are incapable of letting you know that we currently can't participate due to whatever situation it may be.
Great advice. Thank you, Daryl. And I'm making that as a note to the side because I don't think that probably needs to be specified in the code or in the bylaws itself, but the just in as far as process, kind of internal procedure. So
Yes, I agree. It should just be more board practice, not
yeah.
written in.
Actually, I'm going to propose that I move this because it speaks to like being determined. And so I say maybe before. Kyle, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Kyle Chipman, voting member. In can you walk us through the steps or logistics to like, does someone put forward a motion to accept the bylaw, or we let this simmer for 2 weeks, or how do we put
Yeah,
these in?
it's up to you. If somebody feels like the language is strong enough and then you can then delegate. So you could make a motion to adopt it with the revisions discussed. And then staff can make the final edits to make sure that it's clean and submit it to the mayor.
And we have can you remind also on timing, and then based on even the timing for this meeting, does it feel like we'll have maybe like another half meeting for the work plan, or what's the overall timing for both of these documents?
So we have this meeting and next meeting on September 18th. If we want to have just for enough detail for what you want in the annual report and work plan, that would be the published version for council. Or in some years, the board has opted to not meet the deadline that's stated in code and that you need more time to do it. And that's a decision we can make. We try obviously to comply with whatever is written in code. And it says within the first few months of the year. So September 30th is kind of the deadline that we always are moving towards. So we will have another meeting. We do have another topic for the meeting on the 18th because filtration was going to come back and give an update, and it's something obviously the board is interested in because of the just understanding the impacts of the suspension of building and now resuming work, wanting to understand what the financial and staff and et cetera impacts are of that. So that's the other topic currently tentatively slated for the 18th.
Yeah, I'd like to just put forward a plan that we the language feels good. We kind of let this simmer for 2 weeks. We move to the work plan because we also have the presentation coming up at 20 to the hour. And then we can all kind of get our collective juices flowing independently and then come back in 2 weeks and put forward a motion to pass, like finalize and then pass both documents. Does that feel good?
Sounds reasonable. Do people feel in agreement with that?
Yep.
All right, so we will get a redrafted version. I'm seeing some thumbs up and some nodding from folks. So we will make a couple of the revisions that we talked about here, see if there's some improvements in language, and we'll get another version out to you before the meeting on the 18th so that it can be finalized. So let me get back to the slides. And we can move on to the other items. Okay, so if with putting the bylaws for follow-up at the next meeting, then the next item on the agenda is the annual report and work plan. So as I just mentioned, the goal is to comply with code and submit it by the 30th. The code specifies that at a minimum, it needs to include issues that were reviewed, any briefings and topics that were received from others, summary of any recommendations you sent to council, and summary of council action on recommendations. So typically the annual report and the work plan is kind of meets all of those requirements and is a projection of what you're anticipating working on in the coming year, particularly since there's a lot of carryover topics. Obviously, the work plan evolves throughout the year based on what emerges. Didn't anticipate one water last year in the work plan, and once it was known, then it was incorporated. So that's going to happen in any given year. But the goals for today is just to get started on the review of the kind of first draft of what staff has pulled together. Start to get some feedback for what your priorities are, to make sure that we know what we summarize in the executive summary, since some people will only read, that first page, and figure out what degree of revisions and timeline there is. So whether there's enough content that we need some volunteers to work between now and the 18th, or whether we can move forward with it based on the draft that we have. So let me pull up our actual document. And it will look different formatting wise. So this is the draft of the text that goes into the actual document. So we don't bother with the pretty pictures and some of the formatting stuff until we have the language done, and then we do those final cleanup pieces. So it will look slightly different, but is an attempt to try to get it into a format that at least has the different sections that we've had historically and that we try to capture. The bare minimum that we need, as what I said, that was stated in code, we've tried to evolve it into a document that captures a little bit more of the some of the accomplishments and feelings about response and kind of priorities as you move forward, and statement of your values and that kind of stuff. You can decide to take some of these pieces out to add something different in. There is flexibility just within the time constraints if we're still trying to meet the deadline of this month. So we can work our way through this document, but I'm open to feedback. I saw a hand go up and go back down. So if there's something that we wanted to jump to or start with first, we can certainly start wherever you all feel is appropriate. Was it Kyle? Was it your hand? Is it there something you still wanted to say, or is it
yeah, I'll say Kyle Chipman, voting member. Sorry if I'm clogging up the airwaves today, but the first thing I wanted to jump to, and I don't know if it's appropriate, so it was in the budget analysis and recommendation section, and for overall tone, the tone felt like I appreciate the specific dynamic that we are an advisory board and that we're here to be a voice for the citizenry against you know, power structures, but also I want to show appreciation, and specifically I don't know if it's appropriate. I really, all of last year, Cecilia and Farshad, I felt like always showed up very transparently in a wholehearted way. They always came fully prepared, like fully broke down the challenges that they faced. And can we call people out or just say that like I felt like both the bureaus really, as they were navigating some pretty dense and deep challenges, that they were showing up in a really good faith way to engage us and get our take and feedback on how they move forward. I don't know how the people feel that way. And I'm also not just saying that to like build folks up on the call. I really felt that. And DCA Donapal, but especially Farshad and Cecilia, very grateful. And the directors also pivoting, Director Light and I forget the other director's name, but pivoting in a really kind of rapid way. I thought there was a lot of good faith, transparency, and coordination from the bureaus.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Lorraine, go ahead.
Lauren Wilson, voting member. I second that emotion, Kyle. And I think, Amy, you answered this question because clearly this document is pitched to council or council and the mayor, right? Because as I was reading it, I was like, my usual question, okay, why would this matter to a resident of Portland, right? What does this mean? When I start reading this as a regular smegular resident of Portland who has a lot of different priorities, stuff like that. So, and I'm throwing this out, I'm not saying that we would achieve it, but can it be our goal to both develop a communication style for our annual report? And I'm very aware that it's putting something big out there that does both. That communicate, and you all did an amazing job. Bravo. I was quite impressed. It captured the essence of who and what we are and what we attempted to do with all the challenges and stuff like that. And how now, because I have read so many of these reports in so many areas, and when I'm talking out there, and I was like, you read that audit report, the information is in the audit report. Go read the audit report. It says the things that you're talking about, it's in there. So there are these fantastic informational documents out there that nobody reads, that who should be reading doesn't read because, you know, and I'm not saying that this is one because I read it and it read quite nicely and quite easily and provided a lot of good information. So that is when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, we're really hitting it out of the park here. Pop doing a good job, you know, and I was reading it that we did a lot, even though we felt frustrated at times. I was like, oh my God, we really did some good work last year. You know, we really did some work with all the challenges and stuff. So that is what I want to throw out there. How can we do both? Communicating to two different audiences that will require information in two in probably different ways.
Alexis, did you have a response to that or some suggestions?
I just like really
Or-
appreciate what you just said, Lorraine, and I guess I'm thinking about how yeah, like what our role is, and maybe this is something that we want to put in here as a priority for this coming year, is thinking through more of our role as communications to the community. I know that that's come up on prior meetings, and I guess I was just thinking about how with my friends who complain about their utility bills going up, I feel like I'm doing like some explaining about why this is necessary. And it makes me wonder if there's more of a role for this board to be supporting those communications. And I'd be curious what our colleagues at the bureaus have to say. The other thing that I was going to say about this, and I scanned it very quickly, so I apologize if this is already in here, but I was thinking a little bit about, especially in the executive summary piece, if we can be a little bit more specific about what our priorities are in the coming year, and thinking about what the needs are that the bureaus are seeing. I mean, like I think we have a general sense of what some of those are, but in terms of just like, okay, so One Water, we're hiring a new director. What should the pub be doing in these spaces when we're talking about affordability, right? Like what are some specific things that we can be doing to engage in those spaces? And maybe that's in here. But it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. I've always appreciated that we have big goals and big kind of buckets of work, but I also think it would be really helpful to hear from our colleagues in the bureaus around like some of the specific things that we can be engaging and to be planning for a little bit more proactively. And then I also wanted to say that I really appreciate the acknowledgement of Bob at the start. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Alexis. Brooke, go ahead.
Thanks, Brooke Perhanu, voting member. As a, I guess up until recently, purely member of the public, now kind of seeing a document of this kind for the pub for the first time. I first want to just compliment on the level of detail and really the organization and almost the like narrative structure. I felt like it was a very clear kind of took me along the journey of the last year, and I feel like it gave a very good or it was a very helpful for me. I think as I was reading through it, and if I like put my member of the public hat on, it would be maybe helpful for like each of these priority areas to really have like a crystallization of either what like significant action was taken or significant action was identified that needs to be taken in the upcoming fiscal year, or like basically a very short, like 1 to 2 major takeaways for each of these, just to know kind of where we are at in the story of each of these topics, because I love reading through all of the details, but it's also sometimes difficult to kind of like go back and forth between, okay, what happened last year versus where are we right now. So that's really my only kind of major high level feedback. But once again, I do really I love the devil's always in the details, so I appreciate that you put all of that detail in there. And thank you.
I really like that idea. Thank you, Brooke. Julia, go ahead.
It sounds like we're kind of getting at what might be something like an executive summary type document that's like, as I actually think we are pretty good at using plain language and readable language so people can understand. It's like it's the length and the like that succinctness that he just was getting at that made me start thinking that's kind of, I feel like we're honing in on with this conversation. But anyway, just an idea.
Cool. Kyle Chipman, voting member. Is it part of the expectation of the format that we go through a multi-page narrative first and then work into the coming year? It just because it was a lot to read through for me, the details of the year behind to get to the year ahead. But I'm fine if we keep the order.
No, that's a really good point. It's probably an artifact and the reality of it's supposed to be an annual report. The work plan is, I mean, it's supposed to be the summary of the prior year and a plan for the current. So swapping those certainly can take place. It was more the framework of how it's been done historically, and that the emphasis was on capturing and documenting what was achieved in that year. The work plan piece was really intended initially as a pretty basic framework, because then part of the intent is that this report is a report to council, and then pub is supposed to engage directly with council in a work session to talk about kind of the priorities moving forward and get feedback on a work plan. So that was seen as a slightly more dynamic component. In the report, it was a kind of a capturing at this point in time, but it was the start of a dialogue with council. Now, I don't know what work session or engagement with council will look like, because it's a completely different structure of council and we still need to figure that out. My assumption is that it's going to be some direct dialogue with the Transportation and Infrastructure Policy Committee. That's where the dialogue will take place. So whatever we're putting forward here is kind of the reference document that you can then build upon in that conversation.
Thank you, Amy. I have a thought, because and also just an additional time check, that we're 2 minutes from the presentation, the Advisory Bodies Enhancement Project Overview presentation. I am always most excited about the priorities in the work plan for the year ahead. And I have a thought for the board. What if we, each of us over the next 2 weeks, like we think about what, and in a way that is, I believe it was Alexis that raised specificity, a specific priority or pursuit or initiative or approach or action that we would want to see either us in support of the bureaus or the board take. And even if kind of taken to the point that Amy flagged, which was also true of the year before, which is keeping some of the wording vague enough to give us a lot of maneuverability over the course of the year, not to back ourselves into like a positional corner. Even if in the language of the document we keep it kind of loose, we can become more specific and defined as an organized body to then pursue some really specific initiatives and then fold that language back up into these priorities. And that would also give us like some momentum once we start the next meeting to not spin the language overall feels good. Specificity and thinking about timeline and action where everyone brings their voices to the table feels like an exciting start to the next meeting. That's a clean way to say it. What do people think?
I'll say something. This is Jenny O'Connor, voting member. There's a lot of information there. I mean, as I was reading through it, I was trying to figure out, okay, how do you develop a work plan based on all these different issues, and how do you start, and how do you decide, what exactly you're going to do? So yes, Kyle, I agree with you on what you're saying. I'm just not sure how we get there from here in terms of, honing in on what are we going to do? What are our priorities? I mean, there's so many things to look at. So it's a little overwhelming for me being a new member, just because I don't know how you take something like, say, affordability. How do you take that and decide, okay, what does that mean? What do we want to do with it? You know, all the things that comprise putting, doing a task and doing it successfully. So, yeah, that's my comment on this right now. And I would love to be able to fast forward it. I just don't really know what it would take as far as putting a plan together for what we're going to do in the next year. And how we're going to get to consensus on what are the things we're going to do and that kind of thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny. I think particularly because there's so many new folks, I think just a little bit of context too is helpful. Is that, I mean, it used to be that the work plan was kind of developed in the end of the prior year. So usually by June, they kind of had the work plan, but then there's always been this weird dynamic where you have new members coming on and then they're tasked with the work that the prior board members, had defined for them. So we've tried to start some of that development in the prior year, but also still provide opportunity for all the new voices to have input. The reality of the work plan, given the years that I've worked with the board, is that a lot of the work is responsive to what is coming from council and the challenges that the bureaus are facing and changes that come out of projects and needing updates to them. So it's very responsive to, and it's sometimes hard to plan because a lot of things otherwise that are on the plan, you end up not being able to touch because you're busy being responsive. And so the most effective tool has been, and I think Kyle has indicated this too, is having a very short list or a shorter list of what are the priorities that are more proactive that the board is interested in advancing. So, in a prior year, it was the workforce equity was the focus of some of the members. And so that is where it wasn't coming out of in response to the bureaus. It was actually trying to more proactively take a topic and drive it forward and figure out how to fit it within all of the responsive work. A lot of what is on the list in this basic framework are the things that we anticipate needing to be responsive to. They're either core work of the board or they're things that we know are coming from the bureaus because of the interactions we've had at the leadership level, and that we know that they're doing work on an affordability strategy, that it connects very closely to pub's values and priorities, and that there's great interest in giving feedback and learning more about that. Just as one of the examples on here, we know that the flood safety benefit fee is moving forward, and that, I mean, if it's not on your list, it's definitely going to be part of your work, is being responsive to that. So that's where this is intentionally somewhat broad, and the specificity is around the things that we know are coming, or specific priority that the pub members kind of agree this is a priority and what we want to drive moving forward. It is very challenging to do in your first or second meeting, when more than half of you are new. And so I anticipate the work plan is going to need to be dynamic and evolving over the course of the year as you get your footing and move forward. So I like the ideas, and I certainly think that we can work in some of what is being suggested, but I also don't want to set expectations so high that you're spending too much time planning your work and not actually creating the space to move some things forward, because otherwise the work planning part of it could take several meetings, and there's things that, in order for you to be timely and responsive to, have to happen at the upcoming meetings. And so just the reality of needing it to be dynamic enough that you can begin to be responsive to that work. That's helpful, Jenny.
Thank you, Amy. That was really helpful.
All right, Lorraine.
Thanks, Lauren Wilson, voting member. Thanks, Amy, for sharing that, because that was exactly what I was going to share with Jenny. Welcome, hang on, strap on, and that's what it is. That's how I was 3 years ago. There was all this conversation. I'm like, what are we doing? What does this mean? What is it? Whatever. And a lot of things come to us from the bureaus. So like when we say affordability, it does sound vague, but there's a specific focus on that at the Water Bureau. And Director Light, was it a few meetings ago, came and presented about the wonderful work that they have done and the data they have collected and how they are being more innovative, overused word, about how they do that. How do we apply affordability, right? How do we interact with our customers in a way that really centers our core values, right? And it's not just a generic, somebody can't pay their bill and we contacted them twice, 3 times, and you know what? We cut them off, right? So a lot of things come, as Amy said, from council. A lot of stuff come from the presentations, and the bureaus used to come and present, and I'm like, oh my God, another PowerPoint. But you glean a lot of information from that, and that is where you say, hey, this is where we need to jump in and interact and advocate and guide and suggest and push and demand and hold them accountable to say like, okay, what you all are doing will not be good for community, or it will be an excellent, oh yay, you all are doing a good job, or that kind of thing. So so yes, there is some broad language in there, but they refer to specific things that we have heard over the last few years, and we'll be hearing more things to come. So I just wanted to reiterate, what Amy was sharing, and that you are right where you're supposed to be. It's your first meeting. You're right where you're supposed to be. So just don't feel bad about it.
Thank you, Lorraine. That was helpful too.
All right, in recognition of time, I'm going to, Kyle, if it's okay, jump to Daryl and Cormac, if you still had something you wanted to say, just so that we can hear from members, and then I'll come back to you, Kyle. Before I do just want to acknowledge, I know that we're off on agenda times, and the presentation about advisory bodies is information I'm going to be sharing, and so I will keep it down to just a minute at the end. And go fast forward through some of the content, because the stuff of interest will come out later in the month. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm not expecting us to spend as much time as we had allocated on the agenda for that piece, so that we can continue this conversation just a few more minutes. So Daryl, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Darryl Bob, voting member. So I'll try to be as quick as possible. I was just gonna note or suggest, and I always feel like I'm giving you guys more work, but if we perhaps, and it doesn't have to be in this document, but perhaps if we could have links to all of these presentations that you guys have overviewed, and to get an idea of like how you voted and why you voted in certain ways. I gleaned that mostly from this document, and I agreed on most of the things that you voted. I would have voted the same way, but just the background information on just knowing what some of these um policies you were reviewing and what they pertain to would be great. I did the background research myself, but any links to the information that you had at the time, I think would be helpful.
Okay, that's really good feedback. Thank you, Daryl. Cormac, did you have something you wanted to share?
Just piggyback a little bit on what Kyle suggested. I mean, I like the idea of kind of doing a deeper dive and coming back to review. I do feel, to Lorraine's point, like I'm just jumped into a water and I don't know what I'm swimming in, and that's all good, but a big learning curve ahead. I mean, looking at the priorities, to me, it's once I have context, I'm in a position to help have an intelligent discussion on priorities. And I do think, I mean, Kyle, your background, you've mentioned Miro a couple times, and just a facilitated session to prioritize among a group is pretty straightforward exercise, and one I've been involved in many times, but context has to come before the weighing in. So I do feel like I'm going to be probably fairly silent until I understand really what all we're dealing with. But I think appreciate the conversation, Lorraine. Appreciate your input in terms of just we're drinking from the fire hose now. So that's also appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Cormac. Daryl.
Just one last thing, sorry, Daryl Bob, voting member. What I meant to also say was that list or that hyperlink list of the policies that we're reviewing, perhaps posting that on our website so that it would be monumentally helpful for us, but it's even better to post it to show the public what we're advising on, and they can literally see the work and that we're doing and see what we're seeing and why that's fueling what we're saying and recommending.
Thank you, Daryl. Kyle, go ahead.
Okay, I'll be so quick. Thank you so much. Kyle Chipman, voting member. A couple of quick thoughts that jumped out. First, I have been keeping up over the past year, as Cormac mentioned, I've been keeping a big running Miro board, basically from every meeting, which extracts every presentation, every PDF, every website, all the stuff. And you can just pan around and look and review, and there's like links to videos. So I'm happy to, it's been open to the public, or open internet link. And I can also send that back over Amy and Jonah's way, and they can just share it with the new board members. It's like everything that I've seen over the past year. It can help to at least start to give some context. I was thinking of an interesting prism or approach, even if folks are new and just learning and orienting around what is. And I might even use this same prism for myself, is to consider it through the lens of transparency, either for all of these for all of these large ideas, what are how does a public gain access? How does it get executed? How does it get implemented? How is it communicated? How is it made digestible to the public? And if we start to ask those questions for ourselves, we become a conduit for the public's understanding and comprehension of these points. So that can be a helpful exercise if you feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume or the specificity. Like, what does this mean, and how do I find out about flood safety benefit fee? The final point, just to contextualize how I'm approaching this, I think I mentioned this last session, but I'm specifically most excited about, in the consolidation of public works, the Unified Capital Improvement Program, which is tied to maintaining and improving infrastructure, which is about consolidating asset management across all bureaus and providing a more coordinated response. From that exercise playing out into GIS and mapping in order to communicate intuitively how this investment plays out directly in our communities. So that kind of stuff, like, that's how I want to approach it. And I have the benefit of a year building up, but that's what I'm thinking in terms of like a targeted priority plan. What can be proposed and then made homogenous through language to give ourselves flexibility. Thank you for the floor.
All right, thank you. I will make a note, because I realized that that came out since the initial conversation too, and I don't see it specifically on here as the high priority, and you made that clear last time, so I apologize for that. If for anybody who does have some priority items that you're feeling are missing or that you want to flag, as Kyle suggested, any information, whether it's conversational with Jonalyn and myself, and we incorporate changes, or if you have specifics and it's easier for you to email. So phone calls, emails, text, whatever, we'll take information, whatever is easiest for you to get it to us. So anything that can help in both redrafting some versions of this in time for the next meeting, and so that it can continue to evolve, so that we're more prepared at the next meeting to have it in a version that folks feel comfortable moving forward. please reach out to us and let us know. I do actually think that as we were talking and preparing for this conversation, that I consider new pub members and the general public sometimes too to be one of the audiences, intended audiences of the annual report and work plan, because I use it even as staff in looking back to see what was done over, specific years, and link to, because the letters, the specific recommendation letters, are at the back of this document too. So it's also just a spot where it's all compiled. And I think it can be a good tool for that as well. We only have a minute left, so I'm just going to encourage you to reach out to us with more specifics so that we can have more deep conversation at the next meeting. I also will send by email additional information about the Advisory Bodies Enhancement Project. Basically, this is the citywide review of advisory bodies. The pub has been talking about it previously, wanting to be able to provide input. This is an avenue for us to provide feedback to the folks who are doing this evaluation. So far, the bulk of the work, and there are some links and status updates that I can share with you all, but it's pretty dense material. And the bulk of the content relates to, I'm going to skip over this because I will share this information with you, but the areas of improvements are more on so far are on the front end work of defining advisory bodies and how they're classified, and areas that I think are less likely, the areas where pubs feedback and input is where we want your time spent. But what's coming in this next month are the core content areas where we've heard from you previously, are areas where there's interest in providing feedback. So our understanding is by September 25th, I believe, there will be new information that's on these things that are asterisked here, including the bylaws and meetings, expectations, restrictions, supports like stipends, and how boards relate to city leadership. So those are content areas where information is being compiled. They'll put some proposals out and seek feedback from the public. There will be listening sessions that take place early in October, but there also is an online feedback tool. The survey questions are very broad in general, with lots of dense materials behind each of the questions. So it is time consuming to provide feedback. And part of the reason we haven't sent that out yet is because the pieces that are missing are some of those most important pieces where we believe pubs' interest is in sharing feedback. So we will share more information with you electronically, and just want to give a heads up that that is coming, and that the central staff, potentially we can get additional questions to them prior to hopefully your first October meeting, and that will still be in time for that final feedback loop through the input sessions with the public in October on the 9th and 14th. And registration is available for those online. Let's see, we're at the last minute, so I'm just going to say that we'll email with any final announcements. If you are new and have not set up your pub email yet, please do that and get that to us. We are providing that back to that advisory body group that's doing that realignment assessment, so that they have a central resource of email addresses for all advisory board members. So they may be sending some information out, and we just want to make sure that it's going to be to the spot that will work best for you. So next meeting, we will continue to work on the report and work plan. Please get us feedback. And actually, not just prior to the 18th, but we will send read ahead for the meeting on the 18th. I'm trying to look at my calendar really quickly. By next Friday, the 12th, is when we'll be sending that information out. So the sooner you can get us feedback sometime by next week, the better, because then we can incorporate that and make sure that it gets back out to all of your peers, so that you're all seeing their ideas somewhat in advance of the meeting, not just on the fly in the meeting, so that we could be closer to finalizing it. We also hopefully will have time to get filtration project update, and we have the flood safety benefit fee proposal potentially scheduled for the October 7th meeting. So those are the most immediate priorities as far as topics that we know are time sensitive and need to be scheduled. So, and with that, any final comments from the rest of the group before officially adjourn the meeting? And Lorraine, please go ahead.
Quick question or suggestion, Amy, is there like a little synopsis you could send on like flood safety benefit fee proposals so that the new members could just get an idea, because some of these things have been percolating, some of, and so that they will just get an idea of, okay, what is this gonna look like? What it is going to be discussed under that heading stuff, just ease the.
Yes, we can
Yeah.
pull, because we just had a brief presentation. We will compile what we can prior to the meeting, and we actually have some questions from one of the members as well. So we're following up on that, and we'll get information out to the full group. So be watching for more information, and we can also send the link to the presentation information that recently was shared as well. So yes, we will do as much as we can to help bring up to speed and also prepare the DCA, who will be presenting likely, to understand that there's a lot of new folks, and kind of make sure that the presentation covers the basics of what's necessary to understand. All right, with that, I will officially adjourn the meeting and wish you all well. Hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.